Have you ever left a conversation feeling like you gave in to something you didn't actually want? Maybe you said yes when you meant no. Or maybe you walked away wondering how the situation spiraled completely out of your control. Well, here's the truth. No one wants to admit. Manipulation is everywhere. And if you're not careful, you could find yourself being played without even realizing it. If you've ever felt that gut feeling, that sense of being trapped in someone else's game, you're about to learn how to break free from it forever. Manipulation is a subtle art that some people wield like a weapon. It's not always screaming or fighting. Sometimes it's disguised as charm, tears, or carefully chosen words that twist your emotions like a puppet on a string. If you don't know the signs to look for, you could end up falling right into their traps again and again. And while manipulation exists in every type of relationship, today, we're focusing on the tricks some women use to control and influence men. And more importantly, how you can put an end to it starting now. By the end of this video, you'll have a toolbox of practical strategies to protect yourself, regain your power, and build healthier, manipulation-free relationships. Let's break it all down step by step. Let's start by identifying the core of manipulation. At its heart, manipulation is all about control. It's when someone bends the situation, your emotions, or even your perceptions of reality to serve their own interests. And the thing is, manipulation isn't always loud or obvious. In fact, the most effective manipulation is quiet. It sneaks into your mind before you even realize what's happening. One of the most common ways this plays out is through emotional baiting. For example, imagine a scenario where you express something you're unhappy about, but instead of addressing the issue, the other person turns it around on you. Maybe they start crying or accusing you of being cold-hearted. Suddenly, you're apologizing for something that wasn't even your fault. Sound familiar? This is what's known as emotional hijacking. By using their emotions as a tool, manipulators make you feel like the villain, forcing you to surrender control to make things better. But that's only the tip of the iceberg. Some women use flattery as a weapon, showering you with compliments to disarm you. It feels good, right? Everyone loves to hear they're smart, funny, or attractive. But pay attention. If the compliments always come right before they ask for something, chances are it's not sincere. It's strategic. Manipulators know that once you feel valued or desired, you're more likely to let your guard down. Another manipulation tactic revolves around guilt. Guilt is an incredibly powerful emotion, and when weaponized, it can make you act against your own best interest. Imagine you decline a request because it clashes with your priorities, and suddenly you hear, "Wow, I can't believe you'd let me down like this. I thought you cared about me." That sinking feeling in your chest, that's the guilt button being pushed. And if you don't know how to resist it, you might find yourself folding just to make the discomfort stop. So, how do you protect yourself from all of this? First, recognize the patterns. Manipulation only works if you're unaware it's happening. Start paying attention to situations where you feel uneasy or pressured into actions that don't align with your values. Those moments are red flags that you're being influenced in ways you didn't agree to. Second, understand that these tactics often target your emotional core, your kindness, your desire to avoid conflict, or your need to be appreciated. Strengthening your boundaries is key here. If someone cries, flatters, or guilt trips you into submission, it's because they've detected where you're emotionally vulnerable. A solid boundary looks like calmly holding your ground, even when it feels uncomfortable. When you feel that pressure, whether from guilt, emotional outbursts, or undue flattery, practice pausing instead of reacting. Manipulators thrive on impulsive decisions. Taking a step back gives you time to ask yourself, is this what I genuinely want? Or am I just trying to avoid conflict? That pause could be the difference between being in control and being controlled. Now that we've uncovered some common manipulation tactics, it's time to dive deeper into how these tactics work on a psychological level. Manipulation thrives in environments where power dynamics are uneven. The manipulator relies on creating a sense of dependency or vulnerability, where you feel that saying no is not an option. And the scariest part? This kind of control often feels almost invisible when you're in the middle of it. One of the most subtle ways manipulators achieve this is by planting seeds of doubt in your mind. This technique is often called gaslighting, where the manipulator distorts the truth to make you question your perception of reality. Imagine expressing how a particular behavior upset you, and instead of acknowledging it, they say something like, "You're overreacting," or "I don't even remember doing that. Are you sure that's what happened?" Slowly, you begin second-guessing yourself. Was it really a big deal? Did you imagine things? Over time, this strategy chips away at your confidence, making you more pliable to their control. Another layer to manipulation involves exploiting your natural instincts to maintain peace or fairness in the relationship. For instance, women who manipulate often lean into stereotypes about male responsibility or chivalry. A real man would, or "You're supposed to take care of me." Isn't that what love is about? These phrases aren't just casual comments. They're designed to trigger guilt and redefine the standards of the relationship to their advantage. Now, let's talk about the power of scarcity. This isn't just about material things. It can apply to emotional or physical availability too. By withdrawing affection or attention, manipulators create a vacuum. If you've ever felt like you were chasing someone's approval or desperately trying to regain their love after they pull away, that's scarcity at work. It's the push and pull dynamic, a powerful psychological trick that keeps you in a constant state of uncertainty, craving their validation. To protect yourself, you need to break out of this psychological fog. The first step? Develop emotional self-awareness. Start paying close attention to how you feel after certain interactions. Do you feel uneasy, confused, or trapped? These emotions are your subconscious signaling that something is off. Trust those instincts. They're often more accurate than you realize. Next, remember that love, attention, and care should never come at the expense of your self-worth. If someone truly cares about you, they won't need to manipulate you into proving your love for them. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect, not power plays. It's crucial to distinguish between genuine affection and behavior that serves their agenda. You also have to challenge your own need for external validation. Manipulation loses its grip when you stop seeking approval from others to define your worth. Build your confidence and independence outside the relationship. This could be through hobbies, friendships, or personal achievements. The stronger your sense of self, the harder it is for anyone to control you. Finally, learn to say no, confidently and without guilt. This is a skill, and like any skill, it takes practice. Start small. The next time someone asks you for something that doesn't sit right with you, simply say, "I can't do that right now." Don't over-explain or justify your decision. The more you do this, the more natural it will feel. Boundaries are your ultimate armor, and with time, they become nearly impenetrable. When we think about manipulation, it's easy to place all the blame on the manipulator. But here's a truth that's hard to swallow. Manipulators can only succeed if there are cracks in our personal foundation. Those cracks often take the form of unresolved insecurities, emotional needs we're not addressing, or a fear of standing up for ourselves. If you want to stop being manipulated, you have to confront these vulnerabilities head on. Take, for example, the fear of rejection. This is a core insecurity for many people, and manipulators know how to weaponize it. They may hint at withdrawal of love, attention, or approval to keep you in line. The moment you show resistance or question their behavior, they might say things like, "Maybe we're just not compatible," or "If you really cared about me, you wouldn't act like this." These words can cut deep because they tap into your need for connection and acceptance. But here's the thing. If you fear rejection so much that you'll do anything to avoid it, you're handing over the keys to your freedom. Another common vulnerability manipulators exploit is the need to please. If you're the type of person who goes out of their way to avoid conflict, apologizing even when you're not in the wrong, you've already made yourself an easy target. Manipulative people will notice this trait quickly and push your limits until you've bent so far backward that you don't even recognize yourself anymore. They'll say things like, "Don't you want to make me happy?" Or, "I guess my feelings don't matter to you," knowing you'll respond by overcompensating to prove otherwise. Now, let's talk about another big one: the fear of being alone. Loneliness can drive people into situations they'd otherwise avoid, and manipulators know how to use that to their advantage. By making you feel as though they're the only source of comfort, stability, or happiness in your life, they create a dependency. Phrases like, "No one else will ever care about you like I do," or "Good luck finding someone who will put up with you," are designed to trap you in a mindset where you feel like leaving isn't even an option. So, how do you close these cracks? Start by challenging the stories you tell yourself. Are you afraid that standing up for yourself will drive people away? Remind yourself that losing someone who doesn't respect your boundaries is not a loss. It's liberation. Worried that saying no might make you seem uncaring? Understand that prioritizing your needs is not selfish. It's necessary. Building self-worth is also critical. Take stock of what you bring to the table in any relationship: your kindness, your loyalty, your support. Recognize that you have value, independent of anyone else's opinion. The more you respect yourself, the less you'll tolerate behavior that diminishes your dignity. One practical way to reinforce this is by setting boundaries that focus on action, not emotion. For example, instead of saying, "I feel like you don't respect me when you do this," you can say, "I will not tolerate this kind of behavior, and I will remove myself from the situation if it happens again." See the difference? The latter is firm, decisive, and harder to manipulate because it doesn't leave room for debate. Remember, manipulative people thrive on ambiguity and emotional dependency. The clearer you are about your values, boundaries, and expectations, the harder it is for anyone to exploit you. And once you've solidified your internal strength, you become less of a target for manipulation and more of a force to be reckoned with. To truly break free from manipulation, it's not just about recognizing the tactics or setting boundaries. It's about mastering the art of maintaining control in the moment. Manipulators are skilled at creating pressure, emotional, mental, or situational, forcing you into decisions that benefit them. To resist, you need to develop techniques that allow you to stay grounded and avoid getting swept up in their game. One key strategy is learning to detach emotionally. Manipulators often escalate their tactics when they sense resistance, using anger, tears, or even silence to provoke a response. If you find yourself caught in the middle of such a storm, take a mental step back. Instead of reacting emotionally, approach the situation as if you were an outsider observing the scene. Ask yourself, what's actually happening here? What are they trying to achieve? This shift in perspective can help you see their tactics for what they are: manipulation, not genuine communication. Silence is another powerful tool. Manipulators thrive on keeping you engaged, often bombarding you with arguments, questions, or emotional displays. By remaining silent, you disrupt their momentum and take control of the interaction. Silence forces them to fill the void, often exposing the flaws in their arguments or weakening their emotional grip. It also gives you precious seconds to gather your thoughts and respond in a way that aligns with your values, not their agenda. When it comes time to respond, use direct and assertive language. Avoid being defensive or overly explanatory, as this often provides manipulators with ammunition to twist your words. For instance, if someone says, "If you really cared about me, you'd do this for me," respond with something like, "I understand how you feel, but I can't agree to that right now." Notice the lack of defensiveness or justification. You're not asking for permission, you're stating a boundary. Another effective tactic is to answer questions with questions. If a manipulator pressures you with a demand like, "Why won't you do this for me? Don't you love me?" respond with, "Why do you think love means always agreeing with you?" This shifts the focus back onto them, forcing them to confront the underlying flaws in their reasoning. The goal here isn't to argue, but to disrupt their narrative and maintain control of the conversation. It's also critical to be aware of your body language. Manipulators are highly attuned to nonverbal cues, using them to gauge your emotional state and plan their next move. When you're interacting with someone who might be manipulating you, adopt a calm and composed posture. Keep your shoulders back, your face neutral, and your tone steady. Even if you feel a whirlwind of emotions internally, projecting calmness sends the message that you're not easily shaken. But what happens if the manipulator crosses a line? If their tactics escalate into verbal attacks or threats? This is where the concept of disengagement comes into play. You don't owe anyone a debate, and you don't have to endure abusive behavior for the sake of keeping the peace. Practice phrases like, "I'm not comfortable with this conversation right now," or "I'm stepping away until we can discuss this respectfully." Follow through with action, leaving the situation if necessary. Developing these techniques takes time and practice, but each time you use them, you'll notice something remarkable. The manipulator starts to lose their power. The more confident and centered you become, the harder it will be for anyone to sway you from your truth. Let's turn our attention to recognizing patterns in manipulation over time. You see, manipulators often operate through a cycle, and understanding that cycle can help you stay ahead of their tactics. These patterns usually consist of 3 stages: idealization, devaluation, and control. Each stage serves a purpose in their strategy, and learning to spot where you are in this cycle can be a game changer. The first stage is idealization, often referred to as the honeymoon phase. In this stage, the manipulator showers you with affection, praise, or attention, making you feel like you're the center of their world. This could involve compliments, gifts, or over-the-top gestures that make you feel special and valued. On the surface, this seems harmless, even wonderful, but it's not genuine. It's calculated. During this phase, the manipulator is building a sense of trust and dependence, setting the stage for later tactics. The problem with idealization is that it creates a false sense of obligation. After all, when someone's gone out of their way to make you feel incredible, it feels natural to want to return the favor. Manipulators count on this. They know that once you've emotionally invested in the relationship, you'll be less likely to see their next move clearly. Then comes the devaluation stage. This is where the dynamic starts to shift. Compliments turn into backhanded remarks, affection becomes conditional, and the behaviors that made you feel secure are suddenly withheld. For example, they may withdraw emotionally or criticize you for not meeting their expectations. The goal here is to create instability, keeping you off balance and working harder to regain the perfect connection you had before. This stage is particularly dangerous because it often leads to self-doubt. You might find yourself wondering, what did I do wrong? How can I fix this? This mindset puts you in a weaker position, where you're more likely to comply with their demands in the hope of restoring harmony. Finally, there's the control phase. By now, the manipulator has established dominance in the relationship. Whether through guilt, fear, or obligation, they've maneuvered you into a place where you feel compelled to meet their needs at the expense of your own. Control can manifest in many ways, from dictating how you spend your time to influencing your decisions, or even isolating you from friends and family. So, how do you break out of this cycle? First, you must acknowledge that the idealization stage, as intoxicating as it might feel, is not a sign of genuine care. Love bombing, those exaggerated displays of affection, are often a red flag rather than a foundation for a healthy connection. Pay attention to whether these gestures come with strings attached or are followed by subtle demands. When you enter the devaluation stage, don't internalize the manipulator's criticisms. Remember, the shift in their behavior isn't about your shortcomings. It's a calculated attempt to destabilize you. Hold firm to your self-worth, reminding yourself that your value doesn't depend on anyone else's opinion. If you find yourself in the control stage, it's time to take decisive action. Reclaiming your power starts with small but consistent steps, like saying no to unreasonable demands or setting clear boundaries. Recognize that leaving a manipulative relationship isn't just an option. Sometimes it's a necessity. Surround yourself with people who support and affirm your independence, helping you rebuild your confidence and strength. One of the most liberating truths is that you don't have to stay in the cycle. Once you see the pattern for what it is, you can interrupt it. By staying vigilant and reinforcing your boundaries, you can protect yourself from falling into the trap again, and in the process, set the stage for healthier, more fulfilling relationships. Now let's discuss how manipulation isn't just about the other person. It's also about understanding your own emotional triggers. Manipulators thrive because they know exactly which buttons to push. But if you become aware of those buttons yourself, their control starts to crumble. Think of it like this. The less reactive you are, the harder it is for someone to manipulate you. Emotional triggers are the raw spots in your psyche where you're most vulnerable. For example, maybe you grew up in an environment where your achievements were rarely recognized, so you've carried a craving for validation into adulthood. A manipulator might pick up on this and play to it, using praise to control your decisions or push their agenda. Understanding this about yourself is crucial, because once you see it, you can start responding in ways that align with your goals rather than theirs. Another common trigger is the fear of being judged. People often fall victim to manipulation because they're too afraid of looking selfish, heartless, or unreasonable. If someone accuses you of being insensitive just because you set a boundary, how do you react? Do you immediately backpedal, hoping to change their perception of you? If so, you've just handed them the power. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to stopping it. Here's a practical exercise. The next time you feel manipulated, take a moment to examine your immediate emotional reaction. Are you feeling guilty, angry, anxious? Identify the underlying belief that's fueling that emotion. For instance, if you feel guilty, ask yourself why. Is it because you've been conditioned to believe that saying no makes you a bad person? Challenge that belief. Remind yourself that prioritizing your own well-being doesn't make you selfish, it makes you healthy. Now, let's address another tactic, reframing the narrative. Manipulators are skilled storytellers. They craft versions of events that serve their agenda, and if you're not careful, you can get pulled into their version of reality. For instance, if a conflict arises, they might say, "You always make everything about yourself," or "I can never do anything right in your eyes." These statements are designed to make you question your actions and feel responsible for the situation. To counter this, reframe the situation on your terms. Instead of absorbing their version of the story, state your perspective clearly and confidently. For example, you might say, "That's not how I see it. I feel like we both contribute to our disagreements, and I'd like us to focus on finding a solution together." This keeps the conversation grounded in reality and prevents the manipulator from controlling the narrative. In addition to reframing, build your resistance to emotional appeals. Manipulators often exaggerate the stakes to create urgency, like saying, "If you don't help me with this right now, everything will fall apart." When faced with this pressure, take a step back and ask yourself, is this really an emergency? Or is it being presented that way to make me act? Most of the time, you'll find the urgency is manufactured to manipulate your response. One of the most empowering skills you can develop is staying calm under pressure. Manipulators rely on your immediate, emotional reactions to guide their tactics. When you respond with composure, it disrupts their strategy. Practice deep breathing or grounding techniques when you feel overwhelmed in a conversation. Something as simple as pausing for 5 seconds before you respond can make all the difference. Finally, remember that you're never obligated to engage in a toxic dynamic. One of the hardest lessons to learn is that you can walk away, whether it's from an argument, a relationship, or even just a manipulative conversation. You don't have to prove your point or win every interaction. Sometimes, The best way to protect your peace and power is to choose silence and distance over engagement. As we bring everything together, let's focus on how to build a life where manipulation simply can't thrive. This isn't just about defeating a manipulative person, it's about creating an environment where you're always in control of your choices, your emotions, and your boundaries. The first step is cultivating self confidence. Manipulators prey on insecurity, so building your confidence is like putting up an impenetrable shield. But self confidence doesn't just happen, it's a result of consistently showing up for yourself. Start small, set goals, meet them, and celebrate your successes. This could be anything from sticking to your workout schedule to speaking up during a meeting. Each time you honor your commitments to yourself, you reinforce the belief that you're capable and deserving of respect. Self confidence is also about knowing what you stand for. Define your values, those non negotiable principles that guide your decisions. Whether it's integrity, loyalty, or kindness, knowing your core values makes it easier to recognize when someone is trying to steer you off course. If a request or demand conflicts with those values, you'll have the clarity and courage to say no. Next, let's talk about your inner circle. The people you surround yourself with play a massive role in whether manipulation has a chance to take root. Supportive, respectful relationships act as a buffer against toxic influences. They remind you of your worth and help you stay grounded. On the flip side, people who frequently criticize, belittle, or undermine you create fertile ground for manipulation to thrive. Do an inventory of your relationships. Are there people who consistently drain your energy or make you doubt yourself? If so, it may be time to set firmer boundaries or even let go of the connection altogether. Surrounding yourself with individuals who uplift you makes it much harder for anyone to infiltrate your mindset with manipulative tactics. Another key to safeguarding yourself is self-care. This might sound like a cliche, but taking care of your physical, mental, and emotional health creates a foundation of resilience. Think about it. When you're well rested, eating properly, and managing your stress, you're far less likely to make impulsive decisions or fall prey to pressure. Self-care isn't selfish, it's essential. A strong sense of independence also plays a major role in staying manipulation-free. Manipulators often try to create a sense of dependency, whether it's emotional, financial, or otherwise. The more self-sufficient you are, the harder it is for someone to control you. Build your independence by investing in yourself, whether that means learning new skills, advancing your career, or pursuing hobbies that bring you joy. Let's not forget the importance of trusting your instincts. Often, your gut will alert you to manipulation before your brain can fully process it. That uneasy feeling when someone makes a comment that doesn't sit right, that's your intuition telling you to pay attention. Trust it and act on it. Finally, commit to the practice of accountability. This means taking full responsibility for your choices and actions. Why? Because manipulators often succeed when we externalize blame or avoid introspection. When you're accountable to yourself, you take ownership of your reactions and decisions, making it harder for anyone to shift the narrative or guilt you into submission. The journey to being completely unmanipulatable doesn't happen overnight. It's about practicing awareness, building resilience, and making small, consistent changes to your mindset and habits. With time, you'll notice a profound shift, not just in how others treat you, but in how you treat yourself. You'll start attracting healthier relationships and making decisions that reflect your true values. So remember, you have the tools, you have the power, and from this moment on, you can step into every interaction as someone who's unshakable, independent, and in full control of their life. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button to let me know. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into psychology, relationships, and how to navigate life with confidence. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because everyone deserves to live free of manipulation.